Hi, I'm AJ Granelli, and I own Homegrown Pork and Poultry here in Batesland, South Dakota on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. I raise pastured poultry and pork and have a small market garden. I sell through some local or semi-local, depending on what your distance threshold is.
Yeah, what's local to you? You've really got to give context to where you are.
So here, like in Batesland, there's a town about 4 miles that way, and I thought it was 96, but you guys informed me that the sign says population 108 now. So.
And when you say town, what's the infrastructure in that town?
Oh, there's a couple dozen houses, a post office, and a convenience store.
Okay.
There's a little volunteer fire department. So what we were saying, local market. So we have some pop-up small markets around reservations, border towns, and then our big city, 70,000 people or so, is Rapid City, and that's about 2 hours away.
This is where we met AJ.
So that's where about 50% of my product goes to Rapid City in the Northern Hills.
Yeah, and you're transporting it all.
Yep. Everything I do. So I grow it, hands in a lot of the processing. We use USDA exemption. Process poultry. You can do up to 20,000 a year. Pigs, they're red meat, so they go through inspected facilities, and most of it's stored here. I do have cold storage all the way up in the city, and then I distribute it. So a big channel is retail.
Yeah.
The three ways that I bring in sales or income would be farmers markets, my website, which I have drop stations through. I use Gray's Cart. It's a pretty popular platform.
Cool.
So I make trips in different directions about once a month to deliver meat. And then another part of my business is, because a lot of my neighbors and people in the community on the res are what we call food insecure. A lot of people are hungry. So we collect donations through our website, and that goes into a separate account. It goes directly to purchasing pork, chicken, and produce that we then go through a couple nonprofits. We have a food bank that we use. There's a youth center that we distribute to families and kids mostly that wouldn't have access to this high quality food.
That's awesome. Or like, just because we've sort of gotten to know Pine Ridge over the past few days, like potentially very little food at all, right? Like there's
So when we talked about the city being 2 hours away, that's also like where a relatively decent sized grocery store is. There's convenience stores, but they're no bigger than little gas stations with 5 shelves of chips and pop on it and whatnot. So
mostly junk food.
So there's a big push in the area, and by big push, I mean like a few people and a lot more garden programs and things like that are popping up around here, which is all encompassed in that push for what we refer to as food sovereignty, and that is ownership over your food system as opposed to just relying on frozen chicken nuggets and burritos that you have to pay for before you put it in the microwave at the gas station.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
we've been talking with each other and with you about this for the past few days, and we just think that's like the coolest solution to a place where there's really very little production, there's very little employment. Like if nothing else, if you can produce a living off the land, then you have something, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Any way we can bring dollars from outside of a rural area into a rural area, and then once the dollars are here, like we can turn it more here.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Actually invest capital.
I think that's like that's economic growth. That's
Awesome.
controlling the food systems by people that live here, and it like people are excited. Like so another example of like a program that has expanded big time in the past few years is I'm part of this garden class at the local youth center up in Kyle, and we meet. Well, the past year and a half, we've met every week via Zoom, and we have some kids that are as young as 12, and then like 90-year-old ladies that like have no idea still how to work the Zoom, and like fire alarm in the background beeping from the like half-dead battery and things like that. But then we all get together and we do this every week. And we just did like a summer garden tour where we set up a caravan and we go to everybody's gardens, and there's like such a range of experience, and it's to be able to meet people that are like you wouldn't meet, right? Like how often am I hanging with running into ladies and yeah, and like and bachelor guys, and then like also at the same time like there's 13-year-old kids that are like growing a tomato on their porch and they're so jazzed about it. It's a neat community. We get people that do all different stuff. Some people are ranchers and some people are nurses and teachers and whatnot. So that's a cool program.
That sounds incredible.
So yeah, just finishing that garden tour this past weekend was a lot of fun. Everybody's so proud when everybody comes to see their garden. It's like even if it's covered in weeds and whatnot, like there's stuff growing.
Yeah.
And people get excited about the food.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That is really cool. That makes a lot of sense. So back to what you do for a living, can you just kind of briefly explain for people who aren't familiar with chicken tractors just what the daily process is here? And
so like right here, this is chicken tractors, that Salatin style chicken tractors, right? And they move every day, so you can see where these have been and where they're headed. There's 75 birds in each one. Seems to be the ideal stocking rate, and as light as possible. It moves easy and light when they get heavy. Everybody just it's too hard. Right? I'm sure it shouldn't be such a tough project. But yeah, they grow most of their life out on pasture. The taste difference is
immense.
Yeah, almost unexplainable. Anybody that has had pasture or outdoor raised chicken knows that there's a difference.
Yeah, we haven't tried your chicken yet, but we've had your pork, and it's incredible.
Cook some up.
Yeah. The pork is amazing.
I don't know what else is there to say about these. I've been here a couple days. Is there any things that I've mentioned that?
I would just want to point out that this is just, I mean, if someone's familiar with South Dakota, they'll know this, but this is an incredibly low rainfall area, and for where you are, like, this is great. And you said this is actually the field that you have not been using for a very long time, so it hasn't.
So I ran birds across all this grass last summer, so it's at least 9 months off. So chickens will run on this top half here, turkeys will run behind you, and then turkeys will move into netting and any little corner patches that haven't been basically grazed by birds over the past year will allow the turkeys on.
Cool.
The turkeys are amazing. They get a lot out of pasture. They chase bugs. You can see them physically eating a significant portion of the grass as well.
Awesome.
After they're on it, it looks even different. There's much less knocked down, and it's a better graze.
Cool. Yeah, and I guess we should get a shot of your chickens in here. They're more active when it's cool out, but they're just relaxing right now. And
yeah, we're in kind of a hot week.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to be 103 again today.
Yep, and it has been for a while.
So yeah, just trying to keep them cool. They're like in the shade, full of water.
AJ's got some great tricks for keeping these guys healthy and happy in this crazy heat.
Yeah, over the years, been upgrading tractors and technique for, I guess this is probably the 6th year. Had birds, and just little things like when I know it's going to get over 90, I don't feed them in the mornings. I let them finish by midday, and then we'll feed them in the afternoon because having all that feed digesting heats them up all day. So we want to just do little things. There's always a slight breeze on the plains in South Dakota here. So any way that you can prop up the back of the chicken tractor, even just an inch, makes a pressure difference, and air truly flows through.
You mean putting it up an inch, because you have it enclosed on all sides here, right?
Right.
So you're able
need to have enclosed because it seems calm now, but when
sure
come through here,
there's really nothing to stop it. Like we should.
So we've tried structures that are taller also, but they're too vulnerable in the straight line wind that we get. So these guys do well. Had 70-mile-an-hour winds come through, and the most that's happened is literally picked up the tractor and the birds in it and moved it 10 feet and dropped it down. So
wow.
Stayed together. But that was after some learning experience. Kill things like because this side doesn't get opened the entire time they're in here until the day we go to catch them.
Sure.
So these little bungee cords, all the difference. That way I ain't chasing tops into the neighbor's cornfield. Little tweaks. There's always like a little cross section that holds the water right here so it doesn't break in. Little things that you add, and then they become
all that stuff takes time when you have how many coops do you have here? You've got 1, 2, 3, 4.
So there's 5 full right here. I have a dozen tractors.
And that's a lot of thin wood that's being modified, breaking out in the weather.
And like I said, nice and light.
Yeah.
So we do, in prior years, I've done like just 2 tractors every week. This year we're doing larger groups so we can just kind of keep everything even. And I will say, by having all birds the same age instead of multiple ages at the same time, chores, tasks, caring for is 3 times faster.
Yeah.
So we had almost 1,000 birds earlier in the season on that pasture down there with all the tractors set up. And I could take care of that in 1/3 the amount of time last year when I had them spread over 8 weeks of ages.
That's awesome.
So that was nice, but there's other logistics you need to figure out, just processing that many at the same time.
Right, that's a long processing day.
Yeah, exactly.
Could we walk down to your older field and see the difference on the grass there?
Kind of see right here, like the line in that field where the alfalfa started to regrow is green. Where they ran earlier in the spring.
Because up here the grass is, you have great cover and you've done a nice job managing it, but it's far more brittle.
Grasses, the soil definitely changes as we get down to this bottom, and you can see the difference from like this crested wheatgrass as we get into brome grass and some alfalfa. So I think it has to do with the soil on the hillside. There's like a natural drainage that goes through those trees and through the center of that cornfield. So I think that at one point this whole bottom would flood a lot more than it does now. There's stock dams upstream and whatnot, and just agriculture and roads that have changed. It is, but there's definitely a wettest area.
I mean, the difference here is incredible. How many years have you had chickens on this field here?
So 4 years we've run this, and then we get 15 inches of precipitation on a good year.
You can feel the difference underfoot here. Like, it's softer. It's
mulched up, right?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, so it grows really nice here. Before we ran the chickens through, so chickens have been off of this for 2 weeks, and yeah, the bindweed is popping up, but a lot of the grasses are starting to poke through again. Right, this is all regrowth.
And do you seed after the chickens go over?
No, I don't seed in here at all. So this is just a perennial pasture.
Awesome.
I do seed when I rotate pigs around. Ideally, we could use the same area, but I'm just not quite there figuring out.
You mean the same area for chickens and pigs?
Yeah, the more animals that you can raise on the same area.
Sure.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pigs are a little bit violent.
Yeah, they're tougher, and just fencing, setup, they have ways to mess up the pasture if you're not on top of it.
Or anything.
Yeah, exactly. They break everything.
Literally everything.
They don't break.
So this is great. Do you want to just walk over and talk about the pigs for a minute?
Yeah, let's head over to some pigs. We are out in the middle of the pig pastures. I have paddocks broken up into here, approximately 100 by 100 feet. And I fill up a feeder. When they finish that, they typically have grazed down vegetation that they want as well.
So let me just get a shot of the feeder that you're talking about. You're filling up a feeder this size.
You can see a paddock that pigs have been in for 4 or 5 days.
For a few days here, you got like sunflowers. You've got, what do you got in there? What are the stars?
Basically, where it is dirt now is where millet was planted.
Okay.
They've eaten that. There's a lot of other weeds. Each of the paddocks go through kind of. Sometimes we hit it on the right day. Sometimes not. We are continually getting better. We think like the pigs were just on this about 20 days ago.
And this is looking great.
We've had barely an inch of rain over the past month, so I think that's pretty good green cover. We do broadcast. This is sorghum Sudan here, so that bulks up nice. And then a lot of the perennial grasses, they're kind of superficially damaged, so you can see them regrowing and sprouting up.
And you were just telling us a second ago that, so this field was 22 days.
Yeah, I think 22 days ago they were in here.
And that field looked like this
Yeah.
at that time. Because the pigs were on here how long ago?
Well, a few days ago.
Okay.
So 4 or 5 days has been since they've moved from here into that paddock over there.
So they are truly grazing this ground, like you were showing me, bitten off.
See, it's not just rooting it up, because you wouldn't have that grass like grazed off like that. You can see it chopped. You know what I mean? So if you look this way, right, the paddock after that, they were in about a week before. And there's a paddock over in that corner. That was a week before, so now we're at like 35, 40 days, right? Almost 50 days it's been since they were in this
That's
paddock.
this one here?
Yeah, and so this paddock we didn't get rain for a while. This one stayed a little more bare for some extra time, and then we got a 1/4 inch of rain, and you have to plant. It's been a lot of trial and error on what seed goes down. What takes at certain times a year. So through the hot of the summer, I'm throwing like usually a pearl millet or any kind of millet that I can get my hands on, and sorghum Sudan grass does really well for us. It just takes a little bit of rain to get that stuff germinated, and even in hot, dry conditions, it really bulks up mass. Both of them kind of go through like a stunt phase a couple weeks after they germinate, and then they'll start to shoot up. So that little bit of sorghum Sudan grass, if we get an inch of rain before the pigs are back on here, it'll be 5-6 feet. It loves the heat, and it turns into a jungle. So if you come back at the end of August, there'll be pigs in a jungle right here. And
that's awesome.
It's kind of crazy, like you're like going through a cornfield and then just a little pig runs by. But here's a couple pigs right here at the feeder.
Oh, cool. They're lazing around because it's, like we said before, really hot out today.
Yeah, so they got a mud puddle over there. They hide down in the bushes and just make a little nest. So
Let me follow you in there.
I get a custom ground mix at the mill down in town. So all the feed that we do bring in is all from stuff that is locally grown. Currently don't have a big access to organic crops, feedstuffs. So we've chosen that local is going to be our best option right now. We're always trying to improve for the health of the animals and ultimately whoever eats it. But the system works pretty good. I run all this. I don't have machines or tractors to move big stuff. So what happens is when they empty this out, I knock it over, roll it into the next paddock, and fill it up. And they slowly but surely follow their way over there.
Can you explain to me how you're getting feed up there?
Yeah, I back up my truck and stand right here and dump it in. So each week, I don't usually fill it up all the way. I usually buy a ton at a time. So each week, about 40 bags.
How much does that feeder hold?
How much does this weigh?
Yeah, how much can you put in there?
Oh, I think it's like 80 something bushels, it might say on here. And so a bushel of corn is like 56 pounds. So you're probably looking up right about 2 tons.
Okay.
Fits in here. It's like a tiny bit more. As I have converted some of these. There was, when I moved on to this property, these were abandoned and pieced together. So I've put together a couple feeders, and then another one of these I made a grain bin over by the chicken coop out of, so I can fill it up and have a door on the bottom. Just using the trash that was around and repurposed and works again.
Well, it's really cool, and this is an awesome system. It's really cool that you can take something like that and have it become, well, not something even better than that. From what you're saying, that'll be much taller once you get your rain. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, if no rain comes, then we slow down and we've got to sacrifice some small areas for the time. But just the constant rotation, stuff keeps growing, and then we knock it down with pigs, and when it regrows, we put them back on it.
Cool.
In the winter, we move to smaller paddocks closer to the house, so it's easier to get water to them, and then they get hay. So we do bring in hay for the winter, and they get pretty excited about that. So we're out in the tomato garden, right? I found silage bags. So they're out here in the areas that there's farming. They have massive silage bags, and they're giant tubes, like 10 feet wide and a couple 100 feet long, that they fill grain with, so they don't have to bring it to storage. And as it gets sold or shipped through the year, they pull out of it. But they only use this plastic once and then throw it out. And so I laid this down this year, poked some holes and planted tomatoes, and they seem to be doing great. I did the same thing and put this corn. This is like a cool native white corn that came from, I believe, northern Iowa. Just a little bit of horseradish sticking up through an extra hole. There's a big old patch of horseradish over there. So let's see. There was garlic in here. This was full of garlic 3 years ago. So we mulched the way that I talked about. Last year, potatoes and onions were all in here. They moved to there, and the garlic was at the third one. So garlic will be back down this way, and we'll go through that way.
Awesome.
Tomatoes are are challenging here because we get storms that bring hail inevitably.
Yeah.
You can only hope that there's stuff above ground. So try to have stuff that gets harvested different times so we can at least get something each year. Because it is a challenging environment. Like, it looks nice and calm.
Yeah, the video does not capture.
But when a storm comes through,
Yeah,
they can be pretty violent. And it's pretty devastating when you get hailed out.
Yeah, I don't even think the video captures just how it's just a very extreme environment.
Yeah.
Like you're in what is practically a desert.
What were we talking about the other day? The point of.
Oh yes, tell us about the point of isolation.
Yeah, and it's the farthest point in North America from an ocean. So the oceans, like they make weather patterns, I think, like a little less extreme, and so being so far from the ocean, we get the cold and we get the hot, and it's just very volatile.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's part of being out here.
Point of isolation. Yeah. You're very isolated.
Yeah.
You're very isolated.
It's neat though.
Yeah. It's an awesome little homestead.
Prior to moving to South Dakota, I had worked in greenhouses, garden centers, and nurseries. So I've worked at several retail garden centers. So that definitely has helped me, I think, with personable sales skills at the market, things like that. And then I also managed nurseries. So I was into horticulture prior, became a teacher for a while, started growing. Well, honestly, I got 5 laying hens, and everybody was asking me for eggs, and then I got 20 meat birds, and we raised them up, and it took 6 of us 8 hours in the sun, like super miserable to get these 18 that survived by the day that we went to slaughter into the freezer. And we cut off all the wings and we fried up wings the first day. So our hands still smelled like chicken, and we were eating fresh chicken wings. And most of those helpers didn't come back.
Were those your first animals that you ever had?
Yeah, so I had a dog and some goldfish as a kid, and those 5 laying hens that I got started this, and then I took the money from those 18 birds that the neighbors bought and bought another 20, and the next summer did 50, and then kept doubling.
Started the addiction.
Yeah, and then 3 years ago, I was like, time to quit my job and keep raising chickens and pigs.
Yeah, what were you doing before this?
So I was working at a school in Kyle.
And Kyle is on the
high school.
Sorry,
so I was working in an alternative high school.
Okay.
Which was.
What does that mean, really?
Yeah, so we created a program within the school district that gave an opportunity for any student that needed additional support. So that didn't just mean students that were struggling. We also had students that were moving at an accelerated rate. They need,
Sure.
still students and kids, you know what I mean? So they needed support that was different than the general population of schools. So we had kids that legally could only come to a certain setting, and we're not always on the right track. And then we had some kids, and to blend that together and create a very much home environment in a school is kind of what we did.
Cool.
And it was great. I left there. The program is still going and thriving. Last year, when everything shut down through COVID, that program had already set up an avenue that kids could be working online, while all the other schools and the main school was trying to figure out how to get kids working remotely. That was already set up 3 years prior.
Awesome.
So they were able to graduate, I think, like 70 kids out of that program.
Wow.
Which we just started a few years ago. So the first
You
year
should
was like
qualify
4,
that, because you just said 70 and that sounded really small in any other context.
Yeah,
But that's like a ton of
that's
kids
like a
in
whole
this
graduating
population.
Class
Yeah.
in any of the biggest schools around us.
Yeah.
Cities around are all
Yeah, what's the
apart.
total?
Yeah, so I think up there, like, I think there's 300 to 400 kids, K-12.
Yeah, it's a lot of kids.
Yeah, so yeah, they did awesome. It's continued. They put up a high tunnel up there. They have lots of different education opportunities, and it's awesome.
That's really cool.
To be proud to be a part of it. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So this is the coop. Don't mind the mess out front.
Looks good to me. Oh, by the way, how do the ducks fit in? Can you just...
Yeah, somebody gave me a half a dozen ducks, and now there's dozens of ducks. Keep multiplying. Anybody wants a duck, call me up, and I'll meet you at the top of the approach and throw some ducks in your truck.
He's been trying to get us to take a van duck.
Yeah. So this is the chicken coop. This
nice and shady. Here, Gab, come in here.
There was the brick walls, but the roof was all torn open, hadn't been used in decades. And so we put a new roof on. It's multicolored if you look from the other side, and then set up 3 brooders. So I can brood up to 1,000 chickens at a time in this coop.
Awesome.
In here, there's about 100, 130 turkeys. They are going to go out. Probably this weekend, they'll go out to the pasture to live in tractors for a couple more weeks until they're big enough that the owls aren't going to come and scoop them up every day. And then they go into netting and move around, which is pretty cool. So you can see I use Ohio brooders. So this is a bigger one. This is like a 1.5. That's 4x6 with 2 125-watt bulbs in there. And then there's 2 4x4 Ohio brooders. This is 13 by 14 feet, and each of those are 8 by 9 feet.
Cool.
So I'll put 250, if I have to, 275 in each one of those to start. I try to get birds out of the brooder as young as possible. The sooner they're introduced to grass, the better they do. If you can take care of them the first 14 days, you're good. So usually day 15 is when chickens go out to the pasture. If there's probability of rain that night, or it's going to get below 40 degrees or so.
Sure.
Then I'll keep them in an extra day or 2. But pretty much, if the low is going to be over 45 by day 15, especially with a bulk of 75 in each tractor, they're little heat machines. They seem to be fine. People are always worried about getting them out too soon. But I think the first few days, they're very vulnerable to the cold. And if you don't keep a good brooder that first 5 days, you're going to have problems with the chickens later on. Big time. Just like anything, right? It's a foundation. Those first few days, they need those building blocks. They need their organs to grow and start properly. You know what I mean? And then we don't have leg issues that I read about often. Right behind you is one that somehow he went hiding on the last processing day. And so
that's a Cornish cross?
Yeah, he gets to live out his days.
Wow.
As a coop bird now.
He looks great.
Yeah, he's good. So yeah, I mean, all his brothers and sisters went to the freezer last week, and he was hiding in the bushes when we were catching him that morning.
That's actually really cool, because Cornish cross, I mean, for those who aren't familiar, if you don't raise them right, they don't make it to that age.
Yeah.
That's a healthy bird.
Doing fine.
Yeah. That is a really healthy bird.
Chasing bugs and whatnot.
He looks awesome.
So.
That's awesome.
So by brooding birds all summer in there, I have a lot of shavings and whatnot built up. And so what do you do with that, right?
Sure.
So I got into growing garlic a few years ago. So I set up the beds with that mulch in the summer and then let it break down a little bit and then plant directly into it. So I have a nice mulch bed, high in nitrogen, which garlic really likes, especially over the winter when they're setting up to grow the foliage. So that's a great little cycle that I have.
Yeah.
I typically follow potatoes after garlic, and there's a lot of rich organic material after the garlic and the mulch is broken down. And so then we get nice soft potatoes. Behind those weeds is where all the garlic got harvested. And we do a couple thousand bulbs a year.
Wow.
And it tastes great too.
Smells good.
Yeah.
We did a little bit of garlic cutting, and it is beautiful garlic. You covered a lot of what we wanted to ask you just walking around because you are a natural interviewee. But we did want to ask you what motivated you to get into the business. Like, how did you go from teacher on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation to Pasture Poultry?
Right. So I've wanted to work for myself a long time, I think, and just kind of the opportunity presented itself. I kind of started down this venture a few years ago, just raising food for us to eat, and then neighbors bought some, and then just got the crazy idea that yeah, I could probably sell enough, and so left the school. At some point, I really like young people learning, so I think if I can continue to grow and hire more young people, just create opportunities where kids can work or young people work and learn. So whether that's teenagers, young adults, unsure, but I think that the more people that are involved in local food is exciting and brings opportunity.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's kind of my motivation, and I like to eat good food. I just don't tolerate bad food.
Awesome. So this was not a lifelong dream. It just like you drifted into it. I mean, yeah, drifted is not fair because this is an immense amount of work, and you.
Yeah, I've had several lifelong dreams that I guess I haven't had my whole life. You know what I mean? Yes, I like dreams. I like to accomplish projects.
Cool.
And you'll never know if you can do it unless you try.
Yeah.
So there was a point where I was like, I need to leave my job and I need to try this. I don't want to beat myself up over it years. Like, could I start a little business? Like, is that something I can do? Can I actually raise chickens here in cattle country outside where there's like tornadoes sometimes?
Yeah.
So we're doing it. And we're figuring it out.
Well, that's what's so exciting about this place to me. We've stayed here for the past couple of days, and I think it is so cool that if you were to like place a pin on a map and say like, you know, if you wanted to try to sell expensive chicken, what's the worst place on earth that you could attempt to do that?
Right.
This would be a candidate. Like you're in a fairly impoverished area. You're in the middle of South Dakota. Like it's the first thing you're told as a small farmer is like make sure you have a market for your product. You know, like
Right.
And we came from New York, and it was like, you know, sometimes it's a little hard to market that stuff. And you're in such a rural area. This is the point of isolation.
Marketing is hard anywhere. And so you need to be creative in and identify your specific challenges. I think it's not natural. Come on, Jack. For most people that want to raise animals and spend time outside and probably in a low or social setting, marketing is not their first. That's not why they got into the business. You know what I mean? That's not why they do what they do. And so you can find that challenge if there's millions of people. If you don't like to connect with people, then you're not going to do it if there's 10 people or a ton of people around.
All right, Jack.
Jack, come on.
I'll throw it in a minute after the interview.
Go. Okay, I'll put him in the kennel.
Is there someone we can distract him with?
Yeah, you can throw the ball.
Here. Go. Oh. I hit a branch.
Yeah, just relax. Let's settle down a bit.
That's all right.
So,
Farm dog.
what were we talking about? We were talking about the challenges of rural marketing.
Yeah, I'm just amazed that you were able, that you have a market here. I mean, you commute 2 hours to the market, so that's important to know.
And I think there's much healthier markets in other places. It's definitely a challenge for us.
Yeah.
By no means getting rich, one-man show here, but I think that we can set up the systems. It doesn't matter where you live, people like good food everywhere.
Yeah.
And so,
especially once they've had it.
Yeah, changing the narrative back to food is something we should invest in is I think a big part of the game.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
Yeah.
That pretty much covers it. Do you have major goals for your farm going forward other than everything that you just talked about? Of course, you want more customers, more people who want chicken and good chicken.
Yeah, I like to learn about animals. I like figuring out how to take care of them. And from someone like I told you earlier, I had a dog that I got when I got out of college, and I've had some goldfish, and then we had a family dog growing up, but I never raised animals. So I think it's fascinating to just have this many. I've got 4 dogs now.
Yeah.
When I lived in a city, that was one dog was a huge responsibility for a young adult. I mean, you got to think about feeding and watering him, and taking him for a walk and make sure he gets his exercise. And I love having lots of animals to take care of and learn how to make them thrive, not just live.
Yeah.
It's way more fun when they're thriving.
So how many chickens now do you do per year?
We do a couple thousand.
And then how many pigs?
About 50 pigs a year, farm to finish, so there'll be 3 or 4 sows at any given time.
So a lot more than one dog.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that is,
That's
to me,
awesome.
that's significant. That may not be too significant to someone that grew up around animals and was born and raised in a farm setting. But I'm proud of the accomplishment.
You should be. That's a lot of chickens and a lot of pigs. So, being where you are, or in the business that you're in, what would you say are the biggest challenges that you faced with this type of operation? And I guess I'm asking that specifically to where you are, either in South Dakota or on Pine Ridge. I mean, it sounds like marketing probably a hurdle.
Still a challenge. I mean, yeah, all of the challenges that I've had are still challenges,
ongoing.
right? Things need to do better each year. It's always like part of, if you want to get a paycheck at the end of the year or month or whatever, then you need to stay on top of these. No challenge is gone, right?
Yeah.
There's always a new one that presents it. But I think for me, the biggest challenge is everything I'm doing, I'm learning or trying for the first time or a few times after I fail a few times at it. You know what I mean? I don't have. I feel like I didn't come into this with a set notions on how stuff should be done. I just like figured out ways that I think would work for me. So I think also like being in an area where there's not a lot of poultry infrastructure and things like that has forced to go creative routes that find solutions to very specific things, right? So this exact thing is not going to be exactly replicated anywhere, even at someone else's property, right? Everything is tailored to be pretty mobile. I mean, you've seen around here, like I can pick up everything and set it up somewhere else. There's no real permanent infrastructure, which is, I think, pretty unique. But that came from unique challenge that I had, and knowing that I'm renting this little spot and would like to expand to other areas and be mobile.
Sure. AJ has taken that to an extreme. I mean, he built a tiny house here, or I should say shipped in the shell of a tiny house, and then
I would prefer to call it as a cabin. I just don't think I'm so hip enough to own a tiny house.
I'm sorry, it's a cabin. It's a cabin.
But yeah, it's
get a little shot of that. It's awesome.
It's great. It's just a little shed that I finished out the inside.
It's really nice.
Used some old barn wood that was on this property, and it's perfect. You don't need a lot.
It's really cool.
Thanks, appreciate it.
And it's got AC, so it's actually cool, which is nice. You've already touched on this a little bit, but I think one of the most exciting aspects of what you're doing is how often you talk about the food sovereignty angle.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else that you could say about that? I think that that's such an interesting starting point for, I guess, trying to generate value.
So I guess to first step back, and that like access to quality food is minimal here on the res and in rural western South Dakota. Like I said, we've got small convenience stores. It's really far to the grocery store. So I am no means like the only one or trying to take any ownership over a large push in around this res, and I know other reses through Indian country that are doing a lot of great stuff with localizing food system. So I work with a nonprofit here on Pine Ridge, and we're working on establishing a USDA inspected poultry facility.
Awesome.
That creates job opportunities for people that are producing, people that are working processing. If we can get like just poultry is something we're working on, and Sunday I'm actually going to go to a couple different people's houses and help them build their first tractors so they can raise out 75 birds for themselves. And if we can get this larger network of smaller inputs, then we can control the local food system, right? Kids at school can be eating good food that is grown right here. Kids at home can be eating good food that they had a stake in. They took ownership. They learned these animal responsibility. But then there's lots more infrastructure systems that, as a collective, we're working on things like feed, right? So if we want to grow 50,000 chickens on the reservation in the next 5 years, that means we are going to need to figure out how we are going to source and supply and mill and distribute then now we're at like 500,000 pounds of feed, right? So now that sets up another business, and that's the infrastructure that we don't currently have, all those pieces.
Yeah.
So I think food sovereignty to define is going to be a little different for everybody, but just ownership over how, where, and when, what you eat, all the systems that go with it. Yeah.
Well, it's really exciting.
So, yeah,
it's really
great.
cool. Like, as far as we were talking about this yesterday, but as far as like, I feel like with a lot of solutions that you can pose for like impoverished areas, there's a lot of holes you can poke in any idea.
Right.
I feel like there's very little you can say about like growing your own food. It's just inherently valuable.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I like to eat good food too.
Who doesn't?
And yeah, if it's good ingredients, it probably tastes better.
Yeah.
And it's probably healthier for you.
Yeah.
So those are all wins.
Yeah. Awesome. So let's see. The only other thing I wanted to, this will be super interesting because of the very peculiar legal situation on the res. Like I guess I don't even know how food is regulated here, but we wanted to ask you, coming from the local food movement, we know that whether it's local, state, or federal, the regulations are often not tooled for small scale farmers. They're more set up for large scale producers. Right. Is there anything that you, if you could, would change on a regulatory or public policy basis that would kind of enable small scale producers like yourself to maybe have a better shot at participating in the market?
Yeah. So without like getting too specific on like the whole policy system is set up for us to mass distribute food, right? And there are definitely good reasons for that. Like throughout many civilizations, there have been ups and downs in food availability. Sure. And to be able to buffer potential disasters,
right? Spread the eggs out.
Yeah. So I think although it's really easy to just totally jump on the bandwagon that a farm this big and big company that controls is like too much, I think we can find some sort of better balance. I think the pendulum has swung one way for a while, and it's going to go back a little bit the other way, because safety in food system for all people is like essential. And I don't just mean like health safety. I mean any sort of economic disaster or crash that can involve that slow down getting food to people. Right. So there'll be, I hear a lot of talk about like people complaining about like large scale subsidization of our commodity markets, but they would be much unhappier if the system collapsed and then they're without. Right. If you can't get so many people, so nothing can just switch overnight. That's with any major change in society. But to see opportunity opened up for smaller farmers, I think is great. So education policy that helps for multiple avenues of education, like opportunities to learn different systems as opposed to pushing singular systems, I think is a good idea. I'd like to see that.
What do you mean by that?
Like I'd like to see just a continued increase in like our land grant colleges teaching larger conventional right alongside, and which I think are part of the whole system. It might not be as economically efficient to teach someone how to grow 500 pounds of potatoes as compared to how to grow 500,000. But I think that like socially it is a good investment.
Yeah.
So that we can each have a little bit more control. I don't ever see us returning to a super localized everywhere food systems. But if we can just get people into just aware of what it is they're eating, and in our society, the money kind of dictates that. So
baby steps. And
yeah,
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but one thing that you were talking about when we were talking about food sovereignty was the idea of being able to get people in the local area to grow their own food. And it almost sounded like you were hinting at kind of like decentralized production but centralized marketing. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's definitely is something that interested, and generally what we're trying to accomplish with us that are working kind of in the local food shack. So economy of scale is a big thing. So if we can centralize marketing for groups, communities, original co-op models, like there was a reason that happened.
Right.
So why can't we replicate that sort of thing when a lot more people were small scale? And you come together to share resources for a common end goal. There's plenty of room for other people to be raising a few thousand chickens around, and I think that it only helps my business as more people are interested in like pasture raised meat. If I can convince someone else that lives 50 miles down the road, because it's not too many neighbors between here and there, to also raise, and we both have a good healthy product, and we're able to share resources and marketing and processing and everything that goes with that.
And then you're getting the economy of scale in a different way.
Yeah.
You're able to maybe
just reach
share
more
costs.
People on that as well, but just reaching more people to kind of change their mindset on where they're buying their food from.
Yeah. That's awesome. And one thing I feel like gets missed a lot, because around here there's a lot of underemployment, so it's easy to imagine people taking up the torch of like, I'm going to grow my own food. But in communities where people are, for the most part, employed, I feel like it's almost harder to imagine that. But I feel like what gets missed is that a lot of people have kids, and like, what a great way for kids to learn to participate in, first of all, in their families' financial health, their physical health, and being able to feed themselves, but also it teaches entrepreneurial skills. I just feel like that gets glossed over a lot, that we have a lot of like, I guess, idle hands that would get a lot of satisfaction and value out of doing what you're talking about. And while a kid maybe can't necessarily raise 50 hogs and set up a website and market all those things, you can absolutely
do little things,
do education and sort of.
Last summer I had a kid come by. I know his family, and I think he's 10 or 11, and he wanted to get into the egg business, and he had a few chickens, and he wanted to start selling some duck eggs too. So
that's awesome.
His family ranches kind of close to here, and they had some beef, so I traded him like a couple steaks and ground hamburger for half a dozen ducks, and now he's selling duck eggs to his neighbors and whatnot, and I think that's like, love that stuff. Great.
If every yard could have just something going on, it's so much more food available for everybody.
And kids love taking care of animals.
Get
them out to it.
It's fun.
Exactly.
It can truly be fun. Especially when it is actually small scale. It's like, it is family friendly farming. It's not machines that you're going to get your fingers caught in, or poisons being
I wouldn't mind a tractor probably on some days, but
especially feeding the
we do it all pretty good without any machines here.
I'm not anti-machine, that's for sure. Sake of your back. Well, I think that just about covers it. I think we've probably gone over most of this, but just to cap it off, is there anything that the average consumer could do that would make business models like yours more viable, more just give you more options? Like, is there something they can do? Mindset, education, expectations around food. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, they can grow their own tomatoes. And if it doesn't work, then they have a good appreciation for people that are doing something small scale. And if it does work, then they're gonna love the taste, and they're gonna do a little more until they reach what is reasonable for them.
I love that.
So
awesome.
Plant your own tomatoes.
Great. AJ, thank you for hosting us this past few days and agreeing to do the interview.
Of course,
it's been awesome.
It's been
Thanks for
cool.
showing us around.